The sign went up on a Tuesday. Maya Vasquez was sitting in her cubicle at the insurance firm in Omaha, a half-eaten salad wilting beside her keyboard, when her phone buzzed with a text from her younger brother, Derek. Check Mom's Facebook. That was it. No context. No follow-up. Maya thumbed to her mother's page, expecting a photo of a casserole or a passive-aggressive meme about gratitude. Instead, she saw a real estate listing, shared with a caption that made her stomach drop through the floor. So excited to start this new chapter. After 34 wonderful years, it's time to say goodbye to the old house on Maplewood. So many memories, but we're ready for our next adventure. Maya stared at the screen, her pulse hammering in her temples. The photo showed her childhood home, the white colonial on Maplewood Lane, the wraparound porch, the oak tree she'd climbed 100 times, with a red sold banner slapped across the corner. Her parents had sold the house. They had sold it, and they hadn't told her. Not a phone call, not a text, not a mention at Easter dinner 3 weeks ago, when her mother had passed the ham and asked Maya if she was ever going to do something with her degree. She stood up so fast her office chair rolled back and hit the filing cabinet. Her coworker glanced over, but Maya was already walking toward the exit, phone pressed to her ear. The call went to voicemail. Mom, it's Maya. I just saw the Facebook post. I need you to call me back. Right now. She hung up and called her father. Also voicemail. She called Derek. He answered on the second ring, his voice low and guilty. Hey, Maze, did you know? A pause. I knew they were thinking about it. I didn't know they'd actually gone through with it until Mom posted. When did they list it? I don't know. A few months ago. A few months. Maya had visited in March for her birthday. Her mother had made lasagna. Her father had asked her about her car's oil change. Nobody had mentioned selling the house. The house where she'd grown up. The house her grandmother had lived in for the last 12 years of her life, until she'd passed away 2 years ago in the downstairs bedroom that smelled like lavender and menthol rubs. The house Maya had always been promised. Did Grandma know about this? Her voice came out sharp. Derek hesitated. Maya, Grandma's been gone for 2 years. What does that? Did they talk about it before she died? Did she say anything? I don't know. I wasn't part of those conversations. Of course you weren't, Maya thought. You were never part of the conversations about the house because you were never supposed to get it. The house had been Grandma Ruth's. Everyone knew that. And everyone knew, that Grandma Ruth had always intended for Maya to have it. Not because Maya was the favorite grandchild, but because Maya was the only one who had ever truly loved it. If you love emotional family stories filled with betrayal, secrets, and unexpected twists, make sure you subscribe to Broken Trust Stories. We bring you powerful news stories like this every day. Now, let's get back to what happened. Maya drove straight from work to her parents' house, a modest ranch 30 minutes away in Bellevue, and let herself in through the garage door, which was never locked. She found her mother in the kitchen, folding laundry and watching a home improvement show on the small TV mounted under the cabinet. Linda Vasquez looked up, and for a split second, her face registered genuine surprise. Then it shifted into something more guarded. Maya, I wasn't expecting you. You didn't tell me you sold the house. Linda set down a towel, smoothing it flat. I posted about it this morning. I figured you'd see it. You figured I'd see it on Facebook. I was going to call you tonight. Linda's voice had that defensive edge Maya had heard 1,000 times growing up, the one that meant I know you're upset but I'm not going to apologize for this. Tonight. The sale already closed. There's a sold sign on the listing. The closing was this morning. It all happened very fast. How fast could it possibly have happened? Maya's voice cracked. That house has been in our family for 3 generations. It's Grandma Ruth's house. It was supposed to be mine. Linda's face tightened. That's not how that worked out, Maya. What does that mean? It means that when your grandmother passed, the house went to your father and me. And we've decided to sell it. End of story. Maya felt like the floor had shifted beneath her. What do you mean the house went to you? Linda blinked. The estate, Maya. The will. Your grandmothers will left everything to your father. You know that. Maya didn't know that. She had never seen the will. She had never asked to see it, because in the 2 years since Ruth's death, the grief had been too heavy, too tangled, and the family had moved carefully around the subject of the house as if touching it would split something open. But she had always assumed, what about her promise? Maya's voice was small now. She always said the house would be mine. She told me my whole life. She said she'd put it in writing. Linda's expression flickered, just for a second. Then she shook her head. Your grandmother said a lot of things. She got old, Maya. Sometimes people say things they don't mean. She meant it. Look. Linda set the laundry basket on the floor. The house needed work. The foundation was cracking. The roof was original. We got a very good offer. The market is hot right now, and we'd been talking about selling for over a year. A year. Since the estate settled. Maya's father, Tom, came in from the garage, wiping his hands on a rag. He froze when he saw Maya standing in the kitchen, her face pale and wet with tears. Mija. He used the old nickname, my daughter, and it broke something in her chest. I'm sorry you found out this way. Did Grandma leave the house to you? Tom looked at Linda, then back at Maya. Yes. Let me see the will. Excuse me. Linda's voice sharpened. I want to see the will. I want to see what Grandma actually wrote. Because I don't believe she would have sold this house without telling me, and I don't believe she would have left it to you without making sure I was taken care of. Something passed between her parents, a quick, unreadable look. We don't have a copy handy, Tom said. It's in a safe deposit box. Then take me to the bank tomorrow and show me. This is ridiculous, Linda snapped. You're not contesting your grandmother's will. We're your parents. We would never. You didn't even call me. Maya's voice broke, and for a moment, the only sound was the TV murmuring in the background. You listed the house, you found a buyer, you closed, and I found out through a Facebook post. How could you do that? How could you stand there and tell me I have no right to be upset? Silence stretched between them. Tom looked guilty. Linda looked defensive. And Maya, standing in the kitchen where she'd eaten 1,000 after-school snacks, where her grandmother had taught her to knead bread, where the smell of cinnamon and coffee never quite left the walls, felt like a stranger in her own life. The house is sold, Linda said finally. It's done. Now, if you want to be part of this family, you need to accept that. Maya looked at her mother for a long moment. Then she turned and walked back out through the garage, got into her car, and sat in the driveway for 10 minutes, shaking. She had never in her life felt so completely erased. But she had no idea that the worst part hadn't even started yet. 2. The next day, Maya called the Douglas County Probate Office and requested a copy of her grandmother's will. The clerk was helpful, cheerful even, telling her it was public record and she could access it online for a small fee. She paid the fee. She downloaded the document. She read it at her kitchen table with shaking hands. The will was dated March 14, 2011. 12 years before Ruth's death. It was simple, 7 pages, and it left everything, the house, the accounts, the car, the contents of the home, to Thomas Michael Vasquez, her only living child. There was a residual clause, a standard no contest clause, and a signature page with Ruth's careful, shaky script. No mention of Maya. No mention of the house being held in trust for her. No codicil. No separate document. No letter of intent. Just nothing. Maya stared at the document for a long time. She thought about her grandmother, about all the conversations they'd had. Ruth had been sharp until the end, sharper than anyone gave her credit for. She'd known every penny in her budget, every crack in the plaster, every neighbor's nervous tick. She wasn't the kind of person who said things she didn't mean. I'm leaving you the house, Mija. I've always wanted you to have it. It's yours. It's already yours. Those were the words Maya had held onto. Those were the words she'd built a quiet future around. A future where she might one day raise her own children in the house on Maplewood Lane, where the oak tree's roots ran deep into the earth like her own. And now that future had been sold out from under her by parents who hadn't even thought to call. She called her brother that night. Derek was 24, 5 years younger than Maya, still living in an apartment in downtown Omaha, working as a graphic designer. He and Maya had never been close. Derek had been their parents' golden child, the one who got the new car at 16 and the down payment for his condo, but he was the only person in the family who answered her calls. "Derek, did you know about Grandma's will?" "I mean, vaguely. Dad mentioned once that she'd left everything to him. I never really thought about it. She always told me the house would be mine." Derek was quiet for a moment. "Maya, people say things to their grandkids. Maybe she just wanted you to feel special. She didn't lie, Derek. She wasn't like that." "I know, but..." He trailed off, and Maya could hear the discomfort in his voice. "Look, Mom and Dad probably did this the wrong way. They should have told you first. But they had the right to do it. It was their house." "That's not my point." "Then what is your point?" Maya didn't know how to explain it. It wasn't about the money. She didn't care about the sale price, about the stacks of paperwork, about the new chapter her mother was so excited about. It was about the house. The physical place. The creaky staircase and the sunroom where her grandmother had kept her orchids and the built-in bookshelves in the dining room and the back garden where Maya had planted tomatoes with her grandfather when she was 7. It was about being erased from her own history by the people who were supposed to protect her. "My point is that I found out on Facebook. My point is that they hid this from me for months. My point is that if Grandma wanted the house to go to me, something's very wrong." "But the will says..." "I know what the will says." Maya took a breath. "I'm going to figure out what really happened." Derek sighed. "Maya, don't make this into a whole thing. You're just going to make everyone angry." "Everyone's already angry, Derek. Everyone except me. I'm just heartbroken." There was a long pause. Then Derek said, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet, but I'm not just going to accept this." She hung up and sat in the dark for a long time. She had grown up in that house. Not just visited, grown. From the age of 3, when her parents divorced for the first time and then reconciled, she'd spent weeks at a time with her grandparents, sleeping in the little bedroom under the sloping eave with the faded floral wallpaper. It was her grandmother who'd helped her with her science fair projects, her grandmother who'd driven her to swim practice, her grandmother who'd taught her how to balance a checkbook and stand up for herself when the girls at school got cruel. And it was her grandmother who had sat beside her on the porch in the summer of 2019, after Maya's fiancé broke off their engagement, and said, "This house is yours, mija. Don't ever let anyone tell you different. It's the only thing I have left to give you, and I've already given it." Maya had thought she understood then. She'd been wrong. The next morning, she drove to the house. It was a stupid, impulsive thing to do. The sale had closed, the new owners might already be moving in, but she couldn't stop herself. She needed to see it. She needed to stand on that porch one more time and say goodbye properly, because her parents had stolen that from her too. But when she got there, the house wasn't empty. There was a car in the driveway, a silver Mercedes, and the front door was open. Maya parked across the street and watched as a woman in a yellow blouse walked across the lawn, phone pressed to her ear, smiling. The woman was maybe 50, polished, with expensive-looking hair and heels that sank slightly into the grass. The new owner. Maya sat in her car for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, her hands locked around the steering wheel. Then she got out and walked toward the house. The woman saw her coming and ended her call, her smile turning curious. "Can I help you?" "I'm sorry to bother you," Maya said. "I'm Maya Vasquez. My parents owned this house. I grew up here." The woman's expression softened. "Oh, of course. It's lovely to meet you. I'm Beth Adler. We just closed yesterday. We're still getting settled. I know this is strange. I wanted to see it one more time. Before you change everything." Beth studied her for a moment, and something in Maya's face must have told her this wasn't just a nostalgic visit. "Would you like to come inside?" Maya hesitated. She knew she should say no. She knew this was unhealthy, that walking through a stranger's house wouldn't bring her grandmother back or undo the sale. But she nodded, because she couldn't help herself. The house still smelled the same. Lemon oil and old wood and the faint, lingering ghost of Ruth's lavender. The furniture was almost all gone, but the bones were there, the wide entryway, the formal dining room on the left, the kitchen in the back with the yellow tile countertops that Ruth had refused to replace because they were from the 70s and they were coming back in style. Maya, just wait and see. Maya walked through the downstairs, touching the walls, and Beth followed at a polite distance, making small comments about their renovation plans. Then Maya stepped into the sunroom at the back of the house, the small, glass-walled room where Ruth had kept her orchids, and stopped cold. There was a built-in window seat. Maya had forgotten about it. She'd read there as a child, curled up with a blanket and a book, while her grandmother potted plants and listened to old radio shows. The seat had a hinged lid, and under the lid was a storage compartment. The lid was open now. The compartment was empty, but Maya remembered something. "Derek and I used to hide things in here," she said, her voice hollow. "When we were kids. Little toys, notes. Grandma found them one time and didn't say anything. She just started leaving us things in return. Like a game." Beth smiled. "That's a sweet memory." Maya knelt down and ran her fingers along the inside of the compartment. The wood was smooth, sanded by decades of use. Then her fingers brushed something, a small notch, an indentation in the back corner that didn't feel natural. She pressed it. A panel slid aside, revealing a second, hidden compartment behind the first. Maya's breath caught. The hidden space was roughly 8 inches wide and 6 inches deep. And it wasn't empty. Inside was a sealed manila envelope, yellowed with age. "What is that?" Beth asked, stepping closer. Maya lifted the envelope out with trembling hands. The front was blank. The seal was intact. "May I?" Beth extended her hand. Maya hesitated, then handed it over. Beth examined it carefully, turning it over in her manicured fingers. "It's old. The envelope's discolored, but the seal hasn't been broken." She gave it back. "I think this belongs to you." Maya stared at the envelope. She had visited this house hundreds of times over the past 2 years. She had sat in this sunroom, watered the orchids after Ruth died, wept on the floor when the grief got too big. And she had never known about the hidden compartment. She had never known about the envelope. But someone had. Someone had opened the window seat and left the lid up, as if they'd been searching for something and forgotten to close it. Or as if they'd been interrupted. Maya slipped the envelope into her bag, thanked Beth, and walked out of the house on legs that didn't feel like her own. She didn't open the envelope in the car. She wanted to be somewhere safe, somewhere private, somewhere her mother couldn't walk in and ask what she was reading. She drove to her apartment, locked the door, and sat down at her kitchen table. Then she opened the envelope. Inside were 2 items. The first was a handwritten letter, folded in thirds, dated October 2015. The second was a legal document, 8 pages long, covered in official-looking stamps and signatures. Maya read the letter first. "My darling Maya, if you're reading this, then I've either passed on or I've managed to hide something from this family for so long that I thought it was time you knew. I'm guessing it's the first one, because I've never been good at keeping secrets from you. I want you to know that I love you. I've always loved you more than I knew how to say. You are my heart, my legacy, my reason for believing that the future matters. And I need you to know that the house is yours. It has always been yours. The deed is in this envelope. I had it prepared in 2008, after your grandfather passed. It names you as the sole owner of 41 Maplewood Lane, effective upon my death. I never told your parents. I never told anyone. I was afraid." The letter stopped mid-sentence. The pen had dragged across the page, leaving a jagged line. And at the bottom, in Ruth's wavering handwriting, were the words, "I was afraid they would try to stop me." Maya's vision blurred with tears. The second document was indeed a deed. But it had a problem. The deed was a quitclaim, created outside the formal will, assigning the house to Maya upon Ruth's death. The property had been Ruth's own separate property, not part of her marriage to Maya's grandfather. She'd had the right to transfer it. But when Ruth died, the will had been probated, the estate had been settled, and the house had gone to Tom. The quitclaim deed had never been recorded. It had been hidden in the window seat for 9 years, from 2015 until 2024. And now the house had been sold by people who had no right to sell it, if the deed was legitimate. If was the operative word. Maya called an attorney the next morning, a real estate attorney named Sarah Okafor, who came highly recommended by a woman in Maya's building who had fought her own property dispute with an ex-husband. Sarah's office was downtown, in a beige tower with a view of the Missouri River, and she listened to Maya's story without interruption. "The deed is valid," Sarah said finally, setting down the document. "Assuming it was properly executed, and it appears to have been, Ruth had the authority to transfer title. The issue is that it wasn't recorded before her death, and the property was then distributed through probate." "So what does that mean?" "It means the house belonged to you from the moment Ruth died. The probate court made a mistake by including it in the estate. But the new owners, the Adlers purchased the property in good faith, without knowledge of your claim. They likely qualify as bona fide purchasers for value. That means they might get to keep the house, even if the transfer to your parents was invalid." Maya felt the floor tilt. "But it wasn't my parents' house to sell." "Correct. Which means your parents sold property they didn't own. The buyers might have a claim against them. And you might have a claim against your parents for the proceeds of the sale." Sarah tilted her head. "Do you know how much they sold it for?" Maya thought back to the listing she'd seen on Facebook. $475,000. Sarah's eyebrows rose. "That's a substantial amount." "It doesn't matter. I don't want the money. I want the house." "The house is gone, Maya. It's been sold and closed. Unless the buyers are willing to unwind the sale, which they likely won't be, since they just moved in, your remedy is financial." Maya stared at the deed in Sarah's hands. The paper was crisp and official, signed by her grandmother and notarized, stamped with a seal from Sarpy County. It was real. It was legal. And it had been hidden, deliberately, because Ruth had been afraid. Afraid of who? Her own son, Tom. Her daughter-in-law, Linda. Maya had grown up thinking her family was complicated but loving. She'd seen the favoritism toward Derek, the way her accomplishments were always met with a shrug while his were celebrated. But she'd never imagined her parents capable of something like this. This being what, exactly? They hadn't known about the deed. They couldn't have known, unless they'd found it before she did and chosen to ignore it, hoping the hidden compartment would stay hidden forever. Unless someone had been searching the house, found the envelope, and left it there because they couldn't break the seal. Maya thought about the open window seat. The lid had been up, the compartment exposed. Someone had been looking for something. "Can you determine whether the deed is enforceable?" Maya asked. "I can, but it will take time. And I should warn you, if you pursue this, it will become a legal dispute with your parents." "Are you prepared for that?" Maya thought about the Facebook post. About the sold banner. About her mother's voice. "You need to accept that." "I think I've been preparing my whole life without knowing it," she said. 2 weeks later, Maya filed a notice of claim against the proceeds of the sale of 41 Maplewood Lane and a separate motion to challenge the probate distribution of the property. Her parents were served with legal papers on a Thursday evening. On Friday morning, Maya's phone exploded. The first call came from her mother, screaming, "After everything we've done for you. We raised you, Maya. We fed you, we clothed you, we sent you to college. And this is how you repay us. By dragging us into court like common criminals." "I'm not dragging you into court. I'm asserting my legal rights." "Your rights?" Her mother's voice cracked. "That house was our inheritance. Your grandmother left it to us. That deed is a fake, it's notarized. It's legal. And Grandma wrote me a letter explaining everything." A sudden silence. Then, "What letter?" "The one she hid in the window seat with the deed. The one someone clearly searched for and failed to find." Another silence, longer this time. When Linda spoke again, her voice was different, lower, colder. "You need to drop this, Maya. For the sake of this family." "I'm not going to do that." "Then don't bother coming to Thanksgiving." The line went dead. The second call came from her father, 30 minutes later. He didn't scream. He sounded tired, hollowed out, like a man who had aged 10 years overnight. "Mija, I need you to reconsider. Dad, I found a deed that says the house was mine. What did you expect me to do? I expected you to talk to us first. You sold the house without telling me. You found out through a Facebook post. I know, and I'm sorry. He paused. Your mother made a mistake. We both did. But this lawsuit, Maya, this is going to destroy us. The buyers could sue us for the purchase price. We could lose everything. The money is already gone. Maya's heart stopped. What do you mean the money is gone? We used it to pay off the mortgage on our house. To pay off Derek's condo. To pay off your mother's credit cards. We donated $25,000 to the church. There's nothing left to give you. Dad, Maya's voice shook. You sold my house and spent the money on Derek's condo. We didn't know it was your house. The words came out defensive, desperate. We thought it was ours. You thought Grandma left it to you. But she didn't. She left it to me. And you spent my inheritance without even asking if I'd like to be involved in the decision. Tom was silent. Did you ever look for a will? Maya asked. Did you ever search the house for any documents Grandma might have left? Your mother and we went through her things after she passed. We boxed up her clothes, her jewelry. We donated most of it. Did you check the window seat in the sunroom? I don't know what you're talking about. The window seat, Dad. The one with the hinged lid. The one where Derek and I used to hide toys when we were kids. Did you open it? Silence. Then, I don't remember. Maya closed her eyes. I'll send you a copy of the letter. And the deed. You can read for yourself what Grandma wanted. Maya, I have to go. She hung up and sat in her quiet apartment, her heart pounding, her hands shaking. She had expected anger from her parents. She had expected denial. She had not expected the admission that the money was already gone. $475,000. Spent in the 2 months since the sale closed. Paying off mortgages and credit cards and a down payment for Derek's condo. Donating to the church. What else? A car, a vacation, a new kitchen. Maya felt the first stirring of rage, a cold, clarifying anger that cut through the grief and left something hard behind. Then her phone buzzed with a text from Derek. Mom just called me crying. What the hell are you doing? Trying to find out the truth, *, she replied. You're tearing this family apart over a house that's already been sold. Grandma's gone. The house is gone. What do you think you're going to accomplish? Justice, * Maya typed. And if you're lucky, maybe a clear conscience. Derek didn't respond. IV. The weeks that followed were a war of attrition. Maya's mother stopped speaking to her entirely. Her father's attempts at reconciliation were brief and frustrated, each call ending with him asking her to drop the case and her refusing. Derek unfollowed her on all social media and stopped answering her texts. The only family member who reached out was Maya's aunt, Ruth's sister-in-law, a woman named Frances who lived in a retirement community in Council Bluffs. Frances was 87, sharp as a tack, and had never liked Linda. Your grandmother called me about a year before she passed, Frances said when Maya explained the situation. She told me she'd changed her will. Said she was going to leave the house to you, just like she'd always wanted. I asked why she waited so long, and she said she had to be sure the paperwork was done right. Did she tell you about the deed? No, but she told me about the original will. The 2011 one. She said she never updated it because she figured the deed would take care of the house on its own. Frances sighed. Seems she was wrong. Or someone knew about the deed and made sure it never surfaced. Frances was quiet for a long moment. You think your parents found it? I don't know, but someone opened the window seat. The lid was up when I found the hidden compartment. And the envelope was still there, sealed. If they'd found it, why would they leave it? Maybe they didn't find it. Maybe they were looking, and they got interrupted. Maya thought about that. About the chaos of Ruth's final weeks. The hospital visits, the hospice arrangements, the rotating family schedule. Maya had been there almost every day, spending nights on the couch in the living room, holding her grandmother's hand through the seizures and the morphine haze. But there had been hours she wasn't there. Hours when Linda and Tom had been alone with Ruth's things. They had months to clean out the house after she passed, Maya said. They sold most of her furniture, donated her clothes, hired an estate company to do the rest. If they'd found the deed then, they could have hidden it. Destroyed it. But they didn't destroy it. It was still there when you found it. Because they never found the hidden compartment. Maya's mind was racing now. The envelope was still in the window seat because nobody knew the secondary compartment existed. Not even me. Grandma must have added it during the renovation in 2014. So what does that mean? It means my parents sold the house in good faith. They genuinely thought it was theirs. Maya paused. It doesn't excuse the fact that they hid the sale from me. Or that they spent the money without telling me. But it might mean they're not criminals. Francis made a dismissive sound. Criminals come in all shapes, Mija. Your mother sold that property while hiding the sale from the one person with a claim to it. It doesn't take a law degree to see something wrong with that. Maya couldn't disagree. The discovery of the deed had turned her entire family upside down. But the deeper Maya dug, the more questions surfaced. Why had Ruth never filed a formal will that reflected her wishes? Why had she created a quitclaim deed instead of updating the legal documents? Why had she hidden the deed in a secret compartment instead of giving it to Maya directly, or at least telling her about it? And the letter that stopped mid-sentence with the words "I was afraid." What exactly was she afraid of? Maya drove to Council Bluffs to visit Francis on a Sunday afternoon. The retirement community was quiet, the hallways smelling like soup and disinfectant, and Francis greeted her with a hug that was surprisingly strong for a woman of 87. They sat in Francis's small apartment, drinking weak coffee from paper cups, and Francis told Maya everything she knew. Ruth was afraid of your mother, Francis said flatly. She had been for years. Linda was always pushing, always wanting more, wanting better, wanting what wasn't hers. After your grandfather passed, Linda started talking about the house. How it was too big for Ruth to manage alone. How she and Tom would be happy to take it over. How they'd already made plans for the renovation. Linda wanted to modernize the place. New kitchen, new baths, add a second master suite. But she didn't want to pay for it herself. She wanted Ruth to sign the house over while she was still alive, so they could take out a home equity loan to cover the costs. Maya's stomach tightened. What did Grandma say? She said no, absolutely not. And that's when the trouble started. Ruth had confided in Francis that Linda had stopped visiting for 6 months after the refusal. She'd stopped bringing the grandchildren over. She'd made the holidays smaller, colder, more formal. Tom had been caught in the middle, too weak to stand up to his wife, too loyal to confront his mother. Your grandmother loved your father, Francis said softly. But she told me once that she'd never understood why he married women who made him smaller. Women, plural. Linda was his second wife. His first was someone from high school, a girl he married too young and divorced after a year. Francis waved a hand. No children. It doesn't matter. The point is, Ruth didn't trust Linda with the house. But she also didn't want to create a rift with her son while she was alive. So she went behind everyone's back and created the deed. She should have told me. Maybe. Or maybe she was waiting for the right moment. We'll never know. Francis reached over and squeezed Maya's hand. But I know one thing for sure. That house was yours. Your grandmother loved you more than anyone else in this family. And she didn't leave it to your parents, because she knew what they would do to it. Maya called Derek that night and told him what Francis had said. He listened without interruption, then let out a long breath. Even if that's true, Maya, it doesn't change the fact that the house is sold. The new owners aren't just going to hand over the keys because you found an old document. That's not up to me. It's up to the court. I know, but what do you actually want? The money's gone. The house is gone. You're suing Mom and Dad, and even if you win, what's left? Bankruptcy. A lien on their house. Talk to them, Maya. This is insane. Insane is what they did. They sold my inheritance without telling me. They didn't know it was your inheritance. Then why did they hide the sale? Why did they close without calling me? If they truly believed the house was theirs, why not mention it at Easter? Why not ask if I wanted any of the furniture, any of the photos, any of the mementos from Grandma's life? Why not give me a chance to say goodbye? Derek had no answer for that. The next morning, Maya got a call from Sarah Okafor, her attorney. The buyers, Beth Adler and her husband, Michael, had responded to the claim. They were not willing to unwind the sale. They intended to fight the motion and requested proof of Maya's title. But more importantly, they had filed a cross-claim against Tom and Linda Vasquez for breach of warranty of title. Meaning? Maya asked. Meaning if the court determines that your parents didn't have legal title to the property, the Adlers can sue them for damages. Potentially the full purchase price. Maya let that sink in. My parents could lose their house. They could. It depends on how the court rules. Maya should have felt satisfied. Instead, she felt sick. No matter how angry she was, they were still her parents. The idea of them losing everything, being dragged through a public lawsuit, being forced to sell their own home, tangled her emotions into a knot she couldn't undo. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. But time is a factor. The court date is in 6 weeks. If there's a settlement possibility, you should consider it. There was no settlement possibility. Not yet. Because the more Maya thought about the situation, the more she realized that the lawsuit wasn't just about the house. It was about every time her parents had overlooked her, diminished her, treated her like the backup child while Derek got the front seat treatment. It was about the years of being told she was too much, too emotional, too serious, too difficult, while her brother skated through life on charm and entitlement. It was about the fact that she had always come last in her own family. So she decided to fight. The next 6 weeks were exhausting. Maya worked her full-time job, met with Sarah in the evenings, gathered documents, prepared her testimony, and tried not to think about the fact that her mother had blocked her on Facebook and her father had stopped returning her calls. The isolation was crushing. The only people who knew what she was going through were Frances, a woman from her grief support group named Cheryl, and Sarah, who was paid to listen. And then, one evening in early July, Maya's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Hello. Hi, Maya. This is Beth Adler. From the house. Maya's heart stuttered. Beth. Hello. I know this is unusual. I got your number from our attorney. I hope that's okay. I wanted to talk to you woman to woman before this thing goes any further. Okay. Beth's voice was warm but guarded. I understand why you're upset. I read the letter from your grandmother. The attorney shared it with us. And I want you to know that if we'd known about the deed, we never would have bought the house. We love it, but we don't want to live in someone else's family conflict. He laid legal groundwork for years before my grandmother passed. He was careful, but care has a way of being undone in a single moment. Sarah didn't comment. The deposition was scheduled for the following week. Maya's mother refused to attend, citing health issues, but her attorney agreed to depose her separately. Derek showed up at the request of the opposing counsel, looking tense and unhappy in a suit that didn't fit him properly. The deposition was held in a conference room at Sarah's office. Maya sat at one end of a long table, her parents' attorney across from her, a court reporter at the side, recording everything. The attorney, a man named Stephen Grady, was professional and direct, and his first question caught Maya off guard. Ms. Vasquez, when did you first learn that your grandmother intended to leave the house to you? I don't remember exactly. I was young. She told me throughout my childhood. And you believed her? Yes. Why? Maya paused. Because she never lied to me. And because she kept telling me, even as an adult. The last time was in 2023, the year before she passed. Did she ever show you any documentation? No. Did she ever mention a quitclaim deed? No. So you had no knowledge of the deed's existence until you found it in the window seat in May of this year. That's correct. Grady made a note. Let's talk about the window seat. You stated in your filing that the lid was open when you first saw it. Can you describe that more specifically? I walked into the sunroom, and the lid was hinged up. The storage compartment was empty. The lid was not closed. Did the home's new owner, Mrs. Adler, confirm this? I don't know. You'll have to ask her. Grady moved on. Now, the envelope was in a hidden compartment inside the window seat. Is it possible that the compartment was simply a secret hiding spot that your grandmother never told anyone about? Obviously. And is it possible that the envelope was placed there some years ago and simply forgotten? It's possible, but the letter I found inside was dated 2015. She had almost 9 years to retrieve it. Is it possible she intended to retrieve it but never got the chance? Maya hesitated. I suppose. Grady leaned forward. So, then, is it possible that your grandmother changed her mind about leaving the house to you? That she created the quitclaim deed, wrote the letter, hid them in the window seat, and then decided not to follow through, and simply never got around to destroying them? Objection, Sarah said. That's speculation. Grady withdrew the question, but the implication hung in the air. After the deposition, Maya stepped outside into the parking lot, her legs shaky. Her phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Can we talk? They met at a coffee shop in Midtown. Derek looked older than she remembered, shadows under his eyes, his usual easy smile replaced by a grim line. They ordered drinks and sat by a window, not speaking for a moment. Mom didn't take the deposition well, Derek finally said. She told her attorney she wouldn't testify. Maya felt a flicker of satisfaction, followed by a wave of guilt. I'm not doing this to hurt her. I know. Derek stirred his coffee, but you have to understand something. She's not like you, Maya. She doesn't compartmentalize. This lawsuit is consuming her. Dad says she's been losing sleep, crying a lot, fighting with everyone. She's scared. Of what? Of losing everything. Of being publicly humiliated. Of the truth coming out. Maya looked at him sharply. What truth? Derek was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, when I was 16, I came home from school early and heard Mom and Dad arguing in the kitchen. They didn't know I was there. Mom was saying something about Grandma's will, about how they needed to make sure the house was theirs. She said, he closed his eyes, as if the memory hurt. She said, if Ruth changes that will, we lose everything. You need to talk to her before she does something stupid. Maya's blood went cold. When was this? 2015. Spring, maybe, right around the time Grandma wrote the letter. Maya's voice came out barely a whisper. What did Dad say? He said he would talk to her. That he'd make her understand. Derek opened his eyes. I never heard what happened after that. But looking back, I think that's why Mom was so insistent on being the one to clean out Grandma's house after she died. She wasn't packing boxes. She was searching for something. And she didn't find it. Or she found something else that convinced her the deed didn't exist. Maya sat back, her mind spinning. You never told me any of this. What was I supposed to say? Hey, Maya, I think Mom might have manipulated Grandma for years and then lied about her will. You were grieving. We all were. Derek ran a hand through his hair. But after you filed the lawsuit, I started thinking. And the more I thought, the more everything clicked into place. The comments about Grandma needing to be realistic about the house. The way Mom volunteered to handle the probate paperwork. The fact that Dad just went along with everything. Maya reached across the table and touched his arm. Thank you for telling me. I should have told you sooner. I was scared. He exhaled. I'm still scared. But I'm on your side now, Maya. If this goes to trial, I'll testify. The words hit her with unexpected force. All the years of rivalry, of feeling like an outsider in her own family, of resenting the golden child who seemed to glide through life without effort, it all shifted, just a little. Thank you, she said again. The discovery process began in earnest that fall. Maya's mother eventually agreed to testify, though her deposition was postponed twice due to claimed medical appointments that Sarah suspected were delaying tactics. The judge set a firm trial date for December 4th. The family was heading toward a courtroom showdown just before Christmas. Maya tried to stay focused. She worked, she slept, she called Francis, she took long walks in the evenings. She visited the cemetery where her grandmother was buried, standing beside the simple granite headstone, talking softly to the woman who had shaped her life. I don't know what you were afraid of, Grandma. I don't know what they did to you. But I'm going to find out, she said. And when I do, I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you wanted." The next week, Sarah called with news. "The Adlers dropped their cross-claim against your parents." "What? Why?" "Because they had a conversation with their own attorney and realized the damages were uncertain. They've also indicated they might be willing to settle with you directly, to avoid the public spectacle of a trial." "Settle how?" $200,000, paid from their own funds, in exchange for you signing a release of any claim to the property and agreeing not to challenge their title. Maya's head spun. The Adlers were offering her money they didn't owe, money that would come out of their own pockets, because they didn't want to be dragged through a messy court battle. "It's actually a generous offer," Sarah said, "given that the court could rule against you. But it's your call. Why would they do this? They don't owe me anything. They bought a house that turned out to come with a lawsuit. They want to close that chapter and move on with their lives. And they have the resources to make it go away." Maya thought about Beth Adler in her yellow blouse, walking across the lawn of a home she'd never get to enjoy without the shadow of Maya's grief hanging over it. "Let me think about it." "Of course. But if you accept, you'll likely be signing away your claim to the house and any proceeds. That includes your claim against your parents." "I understand." She hung up and sat in her dim living room for a long time. $200,000. After taxes and legal fees, maybe $130,000. Enough to pay off her student loans. Enough for a down payment on a small condo. Enough to start over, free from debt, at the age of 30. But it wasn't enough to make the betrayal go away. It wasn't enough to undo the years of being dismissed, overlooked, and erased. It wasn't enough to buy back her childhood. The next morning, she called Sarah and said she'd accept the Adler settlement. "But I'm not dropping the claim against my parents," she added. "Not until they admit what they did." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "Admit what, exactly?" "That they knew about Grandma's intentions, that they knew about the deed and tried to hide it. That they sold the house knowing it might not be theirs. That they've been lying to me for years." Maya's voice hardened. "I don't want their money. I want the truth." The truth, as it turned out, was not far away. 2 weeks later, Sarah called with a new discovery. During the discovery process, the parents' attorney had turned over a box of documents from the estate, bank records, tax filings, correspondence. In the bottom of the box was a manila envelope, identical to the one Maya had found in the window seat, but this one was torn open and empty. "When did they receive this?" Maya asked, her pulse quickening. "The date of receipt isn't clear. But the envelope is addressed to Tom and Linda, in your grandmother's handwriting. And it's listed in the estate inventory as personal papers. Can we get the contents?" "There are no contents. The envelope is empty." Sarah paused, which suggests either the contents were lost, or someone removed them deliberately. Maya's mind was racing. What had been in the envelope? A copy of the deed. The original will. A letter explaining Ruth's intentions. And who had opened it? Tom, or Linda? She called her father immediately. He answered on the third ring, his voice cautious. "Mija, Dad, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth. There was an envelope in Grandma's estate, a manila envelope with your name on it. Do you know what was inside?" A long silence. Then, "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Dad." The envelope was in the estate files. It was empty. Someone opened it. "Do you know what happened to the contents?" Tom sighed. "Your grandmother gave that to me years ago. Maybe 2015. She rang me at work and told me to come to the house. When I got there, she gave me the envelope and said it was a copy of her will and some other papers. She asked me to keep it safe. I put it in a drawer in my office. I didn't open it for years. I didn't want to think about what was inside. And then she passed away. And when I went to look for it, it was gone." Maya's chest tightened. "What do you mean, gone?" "The drawer was empty. I searched the whole office. Your mother said I must have misplaced it. But I know I put it in that drawer. I locked that door every night. Who else had a key to your office?" Tom was quiet. "Dad, your mother had a spare. And Derek may have had one, at some point, for when he needed to use the computer. Maya's thoughts spun back to her brother. To the guilty looks, the careful answers, the sudden willingness to testify. To the story he'd told her in the coffee shop. Mom was saying something about Grandma's will, about how they needed to make sure the house was theirs. Derek knew about the envelope, she said slowly. That's why he was in the sunroom. What are you talking about? When I found the deed, the window seat was open. Someone had been searching for something. I thought it was Mom. But it was Derek, wasn't it? He was looking for the original deed, the one Grandma said she'd hidden. Tom's voice cracked. Maya, I don't, Derek wouldn't. He told me he overheard you and Mom arguing about the will in 2015. He said Mom was afraid Grandma would do something stupid. And now you're telling me Grandma gave you an envelope with her will inside, and it disappeared from a locked drawer. Maya's voice was rising. What's in that envelope, Dad? What did Grandma want you to know? I don't know. Tom sounded exhausted. I never opened it. How could you not open it? She gave it to you for a reason. Because I was afraid of what it would say. The words burst out of him, raw and desperate. I knew your grandmother wanted to leave the house to you. I knew she'd never really forgiven Linda for the way she'd pushed about the property. And if the will said the house was yours, then Linda would have never, he stopped abruptly. Would have never what? A long pause. Then Tom said, quietly, Linda found the envelope. That's what I think. She found it, opened it, saw the will, and destroyed it. Then she told me she didn't know what I was talking about. His voice was tormented. I chose to believe her, Maya. Because believing her was easier than confronting the truth. Maya sat on the floor of her apartment, the phone pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her face. You knew she was capable of it. And you still sold the house. I thought the house was ours. When we filed the estate, the only will we found was the 2011 one. Linda insisted there was nothing else. She brought in the lawyer, handled all the paperwork. By the time I started asking questions, it was done. The probate was closed. The title was in our names. And then you sold it. We sold it. Tom's voice faltered. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mija. If I could go back, it's too late for that, Dad. It's been too late for years. She hung up and stared at the wall for a long time. The pieces were all there now. The argument Derek had overheard in 2015. The envelope Ruth had given Tom, which had disappeared. The discovery of the 2011 will, which left everything to Tom and nothing to Maya. And the hidden deed in the window seat, the one piece of evidence Linda hadn't been able to find, because Ruth had hidden it so well. Ruth had been playing a dangerous game, and she had lost. But she had also won, in her own way. Maya was still standing. 7. The trial was scheduled for December 4, 2024. 3 days before it was set to begin, Maya's mother agreed to a settlement. The terms were not what Maya had expected. Tom and Linda would not be required to pay her the value of the house. They couldn't, the money was gone. Instead, they would sign over the title to their own home, a 3-bedroom ranch in Bellevue, valued at $380,000, as partial restitution. They would move into a small apartment. They would, for the first time in their lives, have to live without the cushion of property, without the safety net of equity, without the smug certainty that they had their own home while their daughter fought for the scraps of her grandmother's legacy. They would be free to continue their lives. But they would be diminished. Maya had not asked for this. The offer had come from their attorney, in a tense negotiation that lasted 14 hours and ended with Linda signing the papers without once looking at her daughter. Maya signed the settlement in Sarah's office, her hands steady despite the tears pooling in her eyes. The deal included a non-disclosure clause, which meant she would never be able to fully explain the outcome to anyone. But she didn't need to. The people who mattered already knew exactly what had happened. After the papers were signed, Sarah handed Maya the original deed, the one from the hidden compartment. This is yours now. The Adlers will keep the house, but this document is proof of your grandmother's wishes. You should hold onto it. Maya took the deed and folded it carefully into her bag. Then she drove to the cemetery. She stood by her grandmother's grave and read the letter aloud, the one she'd found in the sunroom, the one with the jagged pen line and the unfinished sentence. She read the words over the cold December wind, her voice steady. I was afraid they would try to stop me. I know, Grandma, Maya whispered. I know. And you were right. They did try. But they didn't succeed. For a long time, she stood in the silence, thinking about the house on Maplewood, about the new family now living within its walls, about the old woman who had loved her enough to hide the truth where no one could find it but her. Then she got back in her car and drove home. The news of the settlement reached the family in waves. Derek called first, his voice flat with shock. Mom and Dad are moving out, he said. They're leaving the house by the end of the month. They're renting a place in Omaha. I know. She's really broken, Maya. I've never seen her like this. She's not broken. She's just finally being held accountable for what she did. Maya's voice was quiet. She'll recover. She'll find a way to rebuild. But I needed her to understand that she can't just take things from me and expect me to smile through it. Derek was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Do you still want a relationship with us?" "With you, yes. With Mom and Dad." Maya paused. "I don't know. That's going to take time. But I'm not closing the door completely. Just locking it for a while." "I understand. Take care of yourself, Derek." "You too." A week later, a letter arrived in Maya's mailbox. It was from her mother, handwritten on cream-colored stationery. Maya opened it with trembling hands. "Dear Maya, I know I'm supposed to apologize for what happened, and I am sorry. I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I sold that house when I knew in my heart that your grandmother wanted you to have it. I told myself a lot of things over the years, that you were fine, that you didn't need the money, that Derek deserved more because he was younger and had more life ahead of him. But the truth is, I couldn't stand the thought of you having something I'd spent years wanting for myself. And that jealousy ate away at me until I did things I'm not proud of. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I wanted you to know that I'm glad you found the deed. I'm glad you fought back. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." Mom Maya read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it up, put it in a drawer, and didn't look at it again for a week. On Christmas Eve, she drove to the house on Maplewood one more time. The Adlers had decorated for the holidays, white lights along the roofline, a wreath on the door, a Christmas tree visible through the front window. A car in the driveway. Music faintly audible from inside. Beth Adler saw her through the window and came out, wearing a thick coat and a red scarf. "Maya, I wondered if you'd come by. I just wanted to see it with the lights up. I'm not staying. You're welcome to come in. We'd love to show you what we've done." Maya hesitated. Then she nodded. The house was the same, and it was different. The bones were there, the wide entryway, the dining room on the left, the kitchen with the yellow tile that Beth had, to her credit, left untouched. But there were new touches too. A modern light fixture, a sectional couch, a child's toy box in the corner of the living room. "You have kids," Maya said. "2, a boy and a girl." Beth smiled. "They've been asking about the secret compartment in the sunroom. They're obsessed with it." Maya felt a pang, but it was soft, not sharp. "Let me show them how it works." The children, Mia and Jonah, were 7 and 5. They watched with wide eyes as Maya knelt by the window seat and pressed the hidden notch, sliding aside the panel to reveal the empty compartment. "Whoa," Jonah whispered. "When I was your age, this was my favorite hiding spot," she said. "My grandmother used to leave me little treasures in here. And when she was gone, she left me something that changed my life." "What was it?" Mia asked. "A secret. The most important secret she ever kept." Maya reached into her pocket and pulled out the folded deed, old and lined with creases. "This is a piece of paper that says this house belongs to someone who isn't here anymore. But it used to belong to her. And even though the house is yours now, she wanted me to always remember where I came from." Mia looked at the deed with the same intensity Maya had once brought to her grandmother's garden. "Can we leave things in the hiding spot too?" "Of course you can. I think your parents would like that." Beth watched from the doorway, her eyes soft. "Thank you," she said when Maya stood up. "For what?" "For not making us the enemy. We know now how complicated this was. And we also know that we're only here because you chose to let us stay." Maya shrugged, a small smile flickering at the corner of her lips. The house was never about the money. It was about the promise. And now that I know the promise was real, I don't need the house to keep it. Beth hugged her, then walked her to the door. As Maya drove away, she caught one last glimpse of the house in her rearview mirror, the Christmas lights glowing warmly against the winter sky. It was no longer her home. It probably never would be again. But it was still a place where children were learning about secret spaces and hidden treasures, and that felt right. The house would go on. And so would she. After the emotional conclusion, if this story touched you, make sure you subscribe to Broken Trust Stories for more emotional family stories, shocking secrets, betrayal, and unforgettable twists. New stories are waiting for you every day. The months after the settlement passed in a strange, quiet rhythm. Maya threw herself into her work, took a ceramics class on Tuesday nights, and started seeing a therapist. She bought a small but sunny apartment near downtown, using the money from the Adler settlement to cover the down payment. It wasn't the house on Maplewood, and it never would be, but it was hers in a way the other house never got to be. Her father called every Sunday. The conversations started hesitant, wrapped in silence and unspoken regret, but gradually they found their footing. He never asked her to reconcile with Linda, and she never offered. But in March, she agreed to meet him for lunch, and in April, she invited him to see her new place. He walked through the rooms, nodding at the modest furniture and the mismatched plates, and said, "Your grandmother would have loved this." Maya didn't respond, but she felt the truth of it settle into her chest. Derek visited in May. He'd broken up with his girlfriend and was thinking about moving back to Omaha, maybe back to school. They sat on Maya's small balcony, drinking iced tea and watching the sun set over the city. "I sold my condo," he said abruptly, "to help Mom and Dad with the legal bills. And to pay back the money they spent on the down payment." "Why would you do that?" He shrugged, but his eyes were sad. "I kept thinking about that day in the sunroom. When I was searching for the deed. I knew Mom had taken the envelope from Dad's office. I'd seen her with it years ago. But I didn't say anything because I didn't want to get involved. And then you found the deed on your own, and I realized how much I'd let slide." He took a breath. "I don't want to be that person anymore." Maya reached over and squeezed his hand. "You're already not." In June, a package arrived from Francis. Inside was a small photo album and a note. "Found this in a box Louise sent me years ago. Thought you should have it." The album was filled with pictures of Ruth, her grandmother as a young woman, as a mother, as the old woman Maya remembered with the soft hands and the sharp eyes. There were photographs of the house too, the garden in full bloom, the porch with the wooden swing, the sunroom where the orchids hung in macrame baskets. And tucked into the back of the album was a photograph Maya had never seen before. It showed Ruth standing in the sunroom, one hand resting on the window seat, smiling softly. The photo was dated in the corner, October 2015. It was the same month the letter was written. The same month Ruth had hidden the envelope. The same month everything had changed. Maya framed the photograph and hung it on her wall, next to the original deed. Every morning, she looked at it and remembered. What did Grandma Ruth really fear? The question had circled her mind for a year, chewing at her from the inside, refusing to leave. The letter had answered it only halfway. "I was afraid they would try to stop me." But stop her from what? Stop her from changing the will. Stop her from leaving the house to Maya. Stop her from exposing something too large and too awful to name. Late one night in July, Maya found herself reaching for her phone, then drawing back. The non-disclosure clause was a wall between herself and the people she'd left behind. She couldn't tell the world what had happened, not without dismantling the fragile peace she'd built. But she could tell the people closest to her, and she had. Cheryl, Francis, Sarah, Derek. They all knew some version of the truth. They all believed her. That was enough. In August, she drove out to the cemetery again. The summer heat had browned the grass, and the cicadas were loud in the trees. She knelt by the headstone and traced the letters of her grandmother's name. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay, Grandma, I'm letting go." A warm breeze moved through the branches, scattering leaves across the ground. Somewhere behind her, a car door slammed, and a child's laugh lifted into the air. The world moved on, as it always did, and Maya stood up, dusted off her jeans, and drove home. The last word of her story belonged to no one but her. And it was finally time to write the next chapter.